So, I guess, Jean, what are you good at? Do you feel like you're like particularly good at anything?
I think I'm really good at compromising. Calvin, you're like, no, Jean, that's not true. But
I mean, in what way, I guess?
Well,
Yeah.
I think I'm good at trying to meet in a middle ground for something, whether it's a project or like a negotiation as of late. Because at first I thought my talent was drawing, and I was like, no, I think drawing is just like the form of that concept. And then the concept that I'm good at in drawing is like copying or compromising, negotiating with myself on what decisions I'm going to make to get a final happy outcome.
Like you talk about it all the time of like trying to do what's fair for everybody. And that's what I really appreciate about working with you and like seeing you negotiate stuff with clients, etc. For me particularly, and I think you'll also agree with this, I feel like I'm particularly good at understanding other people's perspectives and trying to put myself in other people's shoes and maybe not necessarily knowing exactly what they're doing, but being conscious of like what they might be feeling.
No, I think you are really good at that, because in a lot of our projects, at least I know I end up positioning you as the voice of the client and always asking you like, is this the right thing to do? Or like, what are your thoughts about this? And you're like, well, I think, and then like, I know you're positioning and keeping the client in mind and whatever, base they're coming from. So I know it's not like, there's no ulterior motive for it. There's no ego involved. It's actually like you're voicing other people's thoughts and like other people's positions for us.
What do you think you realized that you were good at compromising?
Probably 2 weeks ago when we had to do it a lot. But before Jean getting to the stage of that talent, when I was much younger in middle school, I knew I was good at copying, like tracing artwork and copying. It wasn't that I was good at drawing. I knew I was good at copying. It wasn't until I got to probably AP Studio in, was it 11th grade?
Probably 10th or 11th, yeah.
10th or 11th, when it was like, okay, all those years of copying like are coming into play now because you've developed a skill. So you need to now be able to develop the concept on your own. So now I just have to focus on the thought process of it.
I think when I was in middle school, high school, I was like, oh, like everybody's nice and everybody's like considerate, like it's just a thing that people should be. And I didn't realize that it was something that felt more unique to me, at least than it does to other people. Was in college when I became an RA, and I was like, oh, this is coming a little bit more easily to me, or like I feel like I'm able to go through this process a little bit more easily than like my peers are. But I think that other people had realized it in me pretty early. I was always called like a sensitive kid. When I was young, I thought I was like, oh, it's just a thing that people say if your kid doesn't have any other exemplary qualities. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, that's what you just say about the gay kids. And then I was like, oh no, but I guess it has some truth in it too. Have you heard that?
I guess. I don't know. Like,
you're like, oh, such a sensitive boy. It's like, oh, gay. We're talking about talent because we wanted to talk about the role of talent in success. American culture and like the American story in general is always really interested and really captivated by the idea of being wildly and very quickly successful. And in their story, a lot of people give the reason for their success as I'm just like talented, or as something that came forth because I am good at what I do. People recognized what I did, and then just grew from there. A meritocracy, like the greatest people will always become successful. It's kind of like the American story, right? Today, Jean and I want to talk about the role of talent and success, how much skill actually contributes to a person's upward path, and ways to make up for a lack of talent if it's not something that comes naturally to you. I'm Calvin.
And I'm Jane.
And this is 27, a podcast about growing up.
So swinging it to you, Calvin, what do you think talent is?
So I fully wrote this question and I didn't think about it at all. So just off the top of my head, there's this like Twitter, TikTok meme where people will take this audio and it's like, if you have it, you have it. And if you don't, you don't. And frankly, I'm sorry if you don't understand, but like, if you get it, you get it. You don't, you don't. And I guess it's kind of that. Like, talent is something that, like, I guess it is a skill or ability that comes naturally. What do you think about that?
I used to think talent was something that you were born with, but I think as I've gotten older, I realize that talent is actually just knowing what you want And so you're able to like really focus in on it and really go for it. I always go back to the moment I was in one of my drawing classes in college. I was so frustrated because I thought that my talent was art and drawing. And when I wasn't able to have that same excited feeling about making a piece anymore, I was like, what if I'm not a drawer? Like, what if I'm not an artist? My entire identity has shifted. I've only known this my whole life, right? Like, what am I?
I mean, that's what happened when we were talking while you were at USC and you said that you had switched from studio art to design. I was like, oh, that's like a big thing because because like Jean said, like I knew Jean as the art girl. She was the studio. She had the big plastic
portfolio.
Black. Like everybody probably at our high school would think like, oh, Jean was the artist.
I think I even got like a superlative for art. Like that was literally my whole identity, my entire life, right? And I was like, what if I'm not an artist? And I had to really think, what role does art play in my future success? And that's when I think I started to understand a little bit more that talent is not really a form. Like art is a form. Talent is not a form. Talent is identifying like a key point in yourself that you can really capitalize on, and then you apply it to a form. Copying and compromising and like negotiating, those are my talents. And part of it is in design when I get like a composition from Josh Rick and trying to compromise like what his core idea was and what I think is going to be a good composition for the client. So that's like in design. And then in business is like, what price does our client want to pay versus what do we want to get? And then how do we get into a good middle ground there? And I was like, none of that has to do with art, but all of it has to do with knowing that I want people to be happy with the final outcome. So it has shifted from like what I used to think of something being a natural born skill or a natural born talent into like, oh, you actually need to like identify exactly what you want and what you're good at. So it's a lot of it I think is more self-reflection. And so for people who are like a naturally good singer, they love to sing normally. So they want to be a singer. And then it's like, okay, your form is singing. So what is a skill that actually will make you an amazing singer?
I think it's interesting the way that we started the podcast, because when I wrote those like introduction questions, I was thinking that we would probably say something like, you would say art and I would say math or something like that, right? I was thinking that it'd be something very short and very like understandable. But when I heard that you had gone for more of a like conceptual thing, I was like, oh, I can also probably go for what I think is my true strength, which is more of a conceptual thing. Because, you know, I don't do a lot of math anymore. So it's not really a talent and it's not something that I've carried on into my life. But going against like what I had said earlier, in addition to being natural or in addition to coming like easily, talent is a person's like inclination towards understanding something better, right? To give the example that Jean said, you're good at singing, but what led you to being good at singing is like your talent. Maybe it's performance or it's your understanding of beauty and like what sounds good, like you know, being very in tune with your ability to understand audio or something. But it couldn't be any of those things, and that would all lead to the same source of like, you're good at singing, but the talents can still be different. Do you think that the inner understanding leads to an external talent, or do you think the external talent gives you like the familiarity to develop a deeper understanding? Like, which do you think, the chicken and the egg? I
think it can be a two-way journey, you know? And it's really what stage you start to confront these things at. Because I think everyone who's identified as being talented has probably come across a stage in their life where they had to confront like imposter syndrome or confront what if I'm not this? That moment is so pivotal in the direction that you move forward in, and the direction when you say like, I am going to be this amazing singer, or I'm just going to be someone who likes to sing. When you come across that question, or when you confront yourself with it, like, can you answer it and will you dig deeper?
Like you said, it's a two-way street, right? Like they feed into each other, and it kind of becomes this relationship between understanding and practice. And some people lean more on the practice side, some people lean more on the understanding side.
Because when I was younger, probably around 10, I knew that I liked art, and I knew I was good at copying and tracing. That was something I knew spot on already, where I was like, I'm really good at tracing shit. I was in a 4th grade class and I was drawing a whale because my teacher was like, draw a whale as like one of our practices. And he noticed that I drew the whale backwards. Like it was flipped. He's like, you didn't exactly copy it the way it's meant on there. And that's when I knew I was good at copying, because it didn't have to be exact. And then it wasn't until getting into like 10th grade when I was like, you're good at copying, but now you're in AP art, like you gotta go. So it was all muscle memory at that point, where I was like, okay, I know I can draw now because I've spent so many years copying. So can I actually think of the idea now, was the other thing. And then when I got into college, I came across that question again of like, what if I'm not an artist? Like the talent isn't the art now, the talent is actually something else. So talent can also change, but like you have to confront those stages for your talent to actually grow.
Which I think is so different than the way that we see talent as like a culture. Because if I try to think of like, what does a talented person look like? My brain usually goes first to like the child prodigy. You know what I mean? Like you see those news stories about kids who are like, oh, this kid programmed a robot and they're only 7 years old or something. And you're just like, wow, that's crazy. And I'm 27, I'm 28, and I'm, eating chips on the couch. Like that's always the thing, right? That's always the joke that people make. At least from the definition that we've been talking about right now, I don't know if those are necessarily like line up to at least what we think of as what a talented person is, at least as an adult.
I feel like a lot of public culture uses talent to discredit someone. They're like, oh, you're talented. It couldn't have been hard for you. Or like, you couldn't have gone through shit to be able to get you here. It almost sounds like ultimately like the thought process and the amount of time of self-reflection that you had to go through was all for nothing. Like that's the work that no one sees, right? Because they only see you performing, or they only see you completing the act. I'm just good at the thing I'm good at. But if you ask me to find something on my computer, I can't find it. And I was like, I know that about myself because I'm so focused on the one thing I know that I need to be good at, that like everything else, I'm pretty shit in life. And so when you ask someone who's talented to like explain their reason for success, sometimes they're just like, I don't know the words for it because I only know the one thing I'm good at.
So we've talked a little bit about talent and we've started to talk about success. How do, not us as individuals, but how does like our culture define success?
I feel like our culture defines success by money and fame, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 100. Yeah. And it's funny that you put that question in our like run of show, because I'm in the Good Humans Facebook group from, I think, Julie B, right?
I think it's Jubilee
Media. Yeah. And someone had posed a question on, what does success look like to you? And a lot of folks had said, they would be able to afford things that they want. They would be able to be happy, like money just wouldn't be concerned, and they would be able to pursue whatever they're passionate about. I find it funny that, success has to come with money to be able to be defined as successful. For me now, I think success is feeling fulfilled. Right? Like every day I go to bed very thankful and very happy that like, it doesn't matter that I went to bed at like 5 a.m. and have to get up at 9 a.m. I'm like always very blessed and happy.
I agree with you. We live in Calvin talking about capitalism. We live in a capitalist society. So like success is pretty inherently tied to money and financial gain and to a certain extent excess, but maybe not necessarily. I guess if you think of success as like a cultural idea as opposed to like what individuals want, you think of like Scrooge McDuck diving into like a bunch of gold coins, you think of going to Rodeo Drive, or you think about Beverly Hills, you think of like excess and wealth and like Elon Musk, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But I think if like you said, like if you talk to people, I think that even though it is still rooted in money, I think there's a huge difference between that cultural idea and what people actually want, which I think is really interesting. I think it's the sign of like changing times. People don't want too much, or people don't want like a cartoonish amount of money. They just want enough to like feel okay. And like maybe like some people might say like, oh, I want to be able to take care of my family. They want to like, it's more of like a stability thing as opposed to like an excess thing. And maybe that's just the circles that we run in. I'm sure there are a lot of people who just want to like stow away a bunch of money and have generational wealth. I mean, it would be really nice, but I think what a lot of us are aiming for is just to like be in a space where we're not worrying. And that's a much different type of success than what we see on TV, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the role of talent in success is that it's one part. Obviously, like it's one part of it, but I wouldn't even say it's a majority, or I wouldn't even say it's insignificant, but I would just say it's one of many factors that have a questionable importance, which is kind of a cop-out answer, but I don't feel like I can say like talent is 20% of success. It just feels like there's this amorphous amount. It's significant enough that it makes a difference, but it's not significant enough that it's a deal breaker.
It gives you either motivation or the confidence to be able to accomplish something. And that's what kind of moves you forward in your journey of whatever you're doing, you know? And for us, we're just speaking about like the career and future of Studio DBJ. So 2 years ago, I'm not going to say which client this is in case they listen, but I love them. This client had reached out and they wanted to redo their brand identity. And I was like, I can do that. And then they also wanted to do a website. And I was like, I don't know about that. You know, I was like, I don't know if I can do the website because I don't do web design. Holy shit. I don't want to let this project go either. So I was like, okay, I know I can do this because I know I have really great intuition about design relationships and visual relationships. I think you can tell in some initial rounds of design when you were on with me, they looked kind of janky. Like I knew they looked kind of janky. I wasn't gonna lie to myself where I was like, there is something janky about this. I need to resolve it. So to be able to resolve it, I was like, I'm gonna look at a shit ton of websites that are successful and like what makes them successful. When we took on that project, I was like, I know I don't have a lot of that in my wheelhouse, but I know we can do it because I know I can strategize how to resolve the problems that are going to come across it, and also like the understanding that I have about myself to be able to bring it to a level of success.
One thing that you said, I think you mentioned momentum or something related to momentum, right? In terms of just like getting the ball rolling, and that talent has a really big role in at least getting something started for your road to success. I 100% agree with that because I feel like that's what happens to most people when you start something as a kid. It's always easy to like foster talent as a kid, right? Because you're so kind of open to doing whatever. And like children as a whole are just much more malleable than adults are. And I think that's because you can fool yourself into thinking you're good at something, or like nobody else is that great at stuff, so because you're a kid, so it's like you can fool yourself into thinking you're good enough to keep going. And that's the most important part about being successful, is the keep going part. It doesn't even need to be like you're a prodigy. It's just like when I was in high school, I was like starting to do photography and I was starting to take pictures, and I was shit. Like honestly, like most kids with a camera are pretty shit. But because it was something that I did that was like, not everybody's always doing photography. I maybe now because everybody has cameras, but I was like at the cusp of camera phones, so like nobody really was taking photos. So I got like a like maybe 2 or 3 year head start on people. Then I also deluded myself into thinking that I was good at it, and that like gave me the energy and like the opportunities, because like I was known as like the kid with the camera.
I was about to say, you were literally I think you were one of the first kids to bring your camera to school all the time. I didn't know that, so I guess I'm also a trendsetter, so cool for me. You're a trailblazer. So
which sucks though, because I also like now, especially in college, I was like, oh well, now I'm just the Asian guy with the camera. Like every Asian guy has a camera now. So
I'm like, it's okay, I'm just the Asian girl in design. Like
you know,
so there's nothing special about us.
But at least it like for those first couple of years, like, you know, you're good at photography, and I was like, oh cool, and then I wasn't, but it gave me the momentum to like keep practicing and keep doing stuff, to the point where now I do think that I'm at least okay. Like I'm pretty good. The downside is everybody else is also pretty good, but
I know now everyone's
besides the point, like
I was like,
I feel pretty confident in my ability to take a good photo now. And that only could happen because, you know, I had the momentum of people telling me that I was good, and also me believing that I was good. The road to success is paved with delusion, right? Like you have to believe so fiercely that you are good at what you do.
No, I 100 agree with that. I feel like this goes back to an earlier episode where like you have to blindly be so confident in yourself to give yourself momentum. Because when I look at some of the designs that let's be real, I did back then, shit. Total shit. I was like, oh God, this is on the internet forever, you know? But I was so blindly confident that I was like, this is good in this moment. And I was like, I'm gonna keep going with it. And then now I see our designs, I'm like, they're kick-ass now, you know, like they're way kick-ass now. But part of that delusion can't be like ignorant delusion though. It has to be like a guided delusion where you're like, okay, I'm good at photography. I'm not like the world's best photographer, but I'm good at it, and I'm willing to just kind of like lie to myself a little bit to get over that hump of whatever, you know, janky quality I might have. And then you're like, okay, now I'm like a pro at it.
Right. It's the like willingness to grow. Even though you think that you're good, there is the understanding that you can keep going further, as opposed to people who sit down and they think that they're shit and they're like, oh, I have so much more to go. And then that's like stopping you. That's getting in your way.
I was about to say, you know what? Hold on. I might change my mind a little bit because I just thought about something that happened earlier this week during a portfolio review. This was during the group portfolio review, and someone was talking about their passion and their talents of drawing and how they don't want to do any of the other design work that's in their portfolio they're showing. They want to actually do illustration work. And the thing that I had noted was that, you know what, maybe it's not delusion for what you're doing or like being so blindly confident. It's the willingness to advocate for yourself, right? So it's a willingness to say like, I take photography. I might not be good at it right now, but I'm going to continuously promote myself and like do photography because that's the only way my photography will get noticed. And I will send my photography out, even if it's shit. I will send it out to someone and they might hire me, you know? Or like, I'm just going to set up something and have people come by, or I'm going to join yearbook. Like, it might be shitty, but I'm going to do it because I'm willing to do it. You know, the process of getting there is just advocating for yourself and continuously being open to do the thing you want and knowing to ask for it, because no one is going to notice it, and no one's going to notice that talent unless you advocate for yourself. You
can believe that you're the best, but if you don't put yourself out there, if you're like, oh, my work is too good for everybody, so I'm not going to talk to anybody about it, they'll find me, that's not going to work.
Yeah. I guess it's a combo of delusion and advocacy.
Yeah. Which I think also would be helpful if you also had somebody else advocating for you. So like, I think that whether or not you have a natural talent, if you can find somebody who will vouch for you, that can also take you pretty far.
Yeah, no, for real. It's like good support system. Like, you know, whether it's like your best friend rooting you on and saying, hey, I'm going to make you apply to this contest. That's advocacy in your circle and not just coming from yourself. But as long as you also have like that delusion note on saying like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I like will be able to do this. It's, you know, it's a two-way street.
I think you'll read in news stories or from like anecdotes from previous workers that like a lot of really successful CEOs are just crazy people. Yeah. They're just like they are very neurotic, or they're very like particular. They have, and I think that probably just comes from like an intense delusion and like an intense sort of like self-generating machine of like, I'm doing the right thing and I always do the right thing. If nobody else is telling you that, but you can tell yourself that, then that's just fine. And if you can get at least one or two other people to tell you that, then that helps even more. But it's about like being able to establish a level of confidence, whether anybody else believes it's founded or unfounded. As long as you believe in yourself, it gives you the momentum, the confidence, the drive to keep going. And that can come from passion, that can come from advocacy, that can come from support, but it's about that, I guess, more than anything else.
I don't know if this is a talent or if it's just like a personality trait, and I feel like you've heard me say this before. I have a very like addictive or obsessive type of personality. I like to just like really focus in on one thing and like do it and like either get it right or get it to a level that I'm very happy with, where I think the client is going to be happy, or just me in life, I'm going to be happy. And I feel like that is something that like does contribute to at least the success and growth of Studio DBJ. There's no reason to stay up till 4 a.m. to redo a whole design just because like I want to redo it. But that happens quite often where we like get to a certain stage and then I was like, I think it can be better if we do this. And then we'll just redo the whole thing at 4 a.m. and it will be late for the client, but like I am 100% stoked to do that. I don't know if that is talent or if that is just personality trait, but it then leads to projects that are of that level for us to be able to like go through that round again of like, okay, we are good enough to do it, or like we have this delusion that says like we're advocating for ourselves that we can do this level of work, so like we should get this level of work.
It's unfortunate, but that there is sort of a masculine or a more aggressive bias to like the types of personality traits that do become successful, because traits like aggression and like hyperfixation, I guess like dominance more generally, like kind of lead to more success.
Yes.
And that, or at least more of the cultural idea of success, where you're like a CEO, where you have power, you have control, and that's definitely like something to worry about or something to like acknowledge. But there are ways that more feminine or more like nurturing personality traits can also lead to success, more of the success that Gina and I were talking about, where it is more about community focused or internal like stability focused like ways of success. Being a particularly emotionally intelligent person can lead you to, you know, doing great things with, I don't know, nonprofit or like in HR, or maybe not necessarily HR, but like psychology, you know, writing, entertainment. There are like ways to become successful with other personality traits. I just think that America and the world right now is more biased towards
the aggressive. Yeah. Because I totally feel you on that, where it's a pick. Like there's a lot of days where the battle in my head is, do I be aggressive today? Am I aggressive, or do I nurture? Right? Like when does that kind of happen? And that's where the compromise comes in, right? Where you're like, am I going to be aggressive now, or am I going to be nurturing now? Or like, you know, on the softer heart of my side of like, I want everyone to just be happy. I kind of want, I guess, because we're circling around the like, what are other factors that come into play for success? You know, there is a talent. There is where we were talking about personality traits and like between being aggressive and also nurturing, momentum, advocating for self, networking. I wanted to bring up 2 points that we got. There is the acknowledgement of like, talent is something that you're good at, and it's a strength to almost cover for your weakness. And the other one is luck and privilege, and how much does that 100%. Lead to your success? Yeah,
and I think that's definitely I wouldn't call it a blind spot, but it's just something that we sort of the elephant in the room that we haven't really been talking about for this episode, which is that generational wealth is a huge thing, and wealth tends to stay concentrated with the people who already have it. There's a lot of studies, I don't know them offhand, but that just say that, you know, your zip code is probably the most defining like thing that will determine whether or not you're successful.
I believe that.
And obviously there is social mobility from like all like situations. Some people can like fall from, like some people have huge falls from grace, and some people have like, you know, giant leaps into wealth and success, but it's a fraction of a percent of people. So it is just absolutely true that is real. Because
I also look at you know, my journey versus people in my family and people I went to elementary school with, because I was definitely in a different zip code before coming over to this side of the hill, but also during college I was in a completely different zip code, right? Because I was in LA, and I think being in LA has somewhat contributed to the aggression that I was able to have, or the bluntness I'm able to have now. But versus if I had only stayed in the valley, I might not be as like aggressive as I am now. And the whole idea of talent also like being kind of like this fast pass to success, I always think about, you're gonna laugh, I always think about Kylie Jenner. Where girl was gonna be successful no matter what. But I always think about the fact that she also had a choice to make on whether she was going to be successful or not. You know, it is a luck and a privilege that she was born into the family that she's born into, where, you know, she could have been the kid that parties all day, gets drunk, like the rich kid that parties, get drunk, goes on a boat, does nothing with her life, loses all her money. Like she could have definitely gone down that route, but she decided that she was going to go down the route of lip kits and like makeup.
And I guess one thing that I want to add to that is people always talk about Kim and Kylie, and to a lesser extent Kendall, Khloe, Courtney, but like we need to acknowledge the real talent in the Kardashian family, which is Kris. Like Kris is,
oh hell yeah.
People are always like, oh, like, you know, none of them have any talent, but like Kris has a talent. Like she's
made every single one successful. Like that is some real mama manager talent.
So I guess to close out the conversation, like what What should you do if you find out that you have a talent in something?
I always pose this questions during portfolio reviews, which is, can you still do what you do without the actual thing? Can you still have a job doing your passion if design never existed? And if the answer is no, you have to go and reevaluate what you think is your passion or your talent or your skill, and then see if you can apply it somewhere else. I think that's what you should do if you have a talent. Like, don't get so focused on one thing.
If you find out that you're great at design, what other well can you pull from to like make that talent even more unique and even more like strong? Find somebody to help like nurture it as well. Because I think the most important thing, I mean, number one from an advocacy standpoint, but number two from like finding you a place to direct your talent is really important to figuring out how to move forward.
Yeah. And so I'm like, Calvin, what should you do if you don't have talent?
That sounds pointed because it sounds like you're asking me because I don't have any talent. No, I'm just kidding. I think a big thing is compensating sounds like a bad word because it's, people always use it in terms of like making up for a very negative and deep flaw of your life. But I think compensating by like understanding what you do bring to the table. A lot of times, maybe the less talented person, especially in design, the less talented person might get a job because they're much easier to work with. They're like a dream to like collaborate with, or they're like really easy, they're really responsive. I guess the tip is to understand how people within the place that you want to enter work and how you can make that a good experience for them. Even if, you might not be able to provide the exact talent that they need, that you can make up for it by making the process easier or understanding the way that they exist in the world or something like that.
If you don't know what your talent is, don't focus don't center yourself so much. Look at your community around you or your network around you and see what are the positive aspects of yourself or what they think you're good at. Because that's kind of signaling something, like signaling certain directions for you to go down. And especially if they say like, I'm like, hey, Calvin, you're really good at writing. And you're like, I don't know about that, but like that means I'm good in something academic. And so then it's like that's a circle or an umbrella for you to start to look into. And then part of it is like your own willingness to like put in the practice and put in the time. You'll never find your talent if you never give yourself the time to focus on it. A lot of recognition and self-awareness. I don't know what it is about the water, but a lot of those defining moments and pivotal questions in my life just come when I'm in the shower. So you just got to give yourself like 15 minutes.
One thing that I wanted to bring up that you had mentioned while you were talking about talent and the struggles of both talented and untalented people is people are always going to find a way to make you feel like you didn't do a good job. You know what I mean? Like if you're talented, they'll be like, oh, like, of course, you didn't have to try that hard. If you're not talented, they'll be like, oh, well, you're shit at this, so you should even just give up. Whether your ability is natural and like comes easily, or it's you worked hard to get there, there's going to be some amount of resistance that you run into when you try to do anything. So just that, like, I don't know, find the delusion and pull it out when you need it, because it's not like a talented person doesn't go through any struggle either. Thank you everybody for joining us for this episode. We really appreciate it. I know that it's kind of been a long time in the making because like we've, you heard from the last episode, Gina and I have been having some growing pains at Studio DJ, just to be a little transparent.
Yes, that's the right
which is totally fine. Be sure to find us on Spotify and Apple Music and share our episode around. You can sign up for our newsletter, which is available at studiodbj.com. If you just scroll a little bit, you'll get a pop-up that asks you to sign up, and it'll let you know when our next episodes are going to be coming out.
Well, I also want to add, also, if you are ever interested in working with us, whether you are a potential client or also just a freelancer, I was like, drop us a line, because we're consistently now, I think, looking to expand our roster a bit more. And so just send it on over, and I guess just tell us what you're talented at so we know.
We haven't decided what our next episode is going to be about, but we are going to be trying to get a special guest for it. So we will decide around who that person is.
I know, the mystery. So you have to listen to the next episode.
So we'll catch you then in 2 weeks, but we appreciate you tuning in. Do we do anything at the end anymore?
We just say bye.
Okay. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.